guys, hey tea talkers. Happy Tuesday. So we're already in August. It feels like the year is just flying by. Um, I had to go through the whole month of July knowing that it was Christmas in July, and I'm a super big Halloween fan. So, I mean, I like Christmas too. But anyway, we're getting closer to fall, which is my favorite season. Um, with that, you guys know I've had some uh, pumpkin spice stuff in the past, and I had, oh gosh, what is it called? Um, my cider, pumpkin cider. But tonight it is tea. It is black tea, iced tea. I do like 3/4 of the way unsweet and then a little bit of sweet so that it's not like super harsh. But don't forget to let me know that you're here. Go ahead and comment. Um, who you are, where you are, and we'll jump into it. We're going to have a little bit of a relaxed tea talk for once. So, looks like we've got Christy. Christy, you're back. Welcome back and congratulations on your certification. I've been waiting a while to tell you that through Tea Talk. So, congratulations. We're super happy for you. And yes, pumpkin spice season is on the way. I have to admit, over the past couple of days, I've checked Starbucks' menu to see if they have pumpkin spice on it yet. I know it's only August, but hey, one can hope. So I've been super hopeful that pumpkin spice will be back on the menu. So sorry, I'm just adjusting my computer here. And so we've got Ricky. So, oh yeah, happy Halloween. I love those memes. They say, I refuse to be controlled by a calendar. So happy Halloween, or, even Merry Christmas. Pretty funny. So, yep, Ricky, Las Vegas in the house. What are you drinking tonight? Is it wine or is it tea or what you have going on, or coffee? Christy, you're very, very welcome. We're so happy for you. It's super exciting. I remember waiting on my certification. So I went to college for coding. I went to like a private technical college, and you got, at the time, it was so long ago, you got like a diploma, that you went through the program there, but that didn't really mean anything to the industry. So you really needed to sit for a certification exam. And the certification exam that was included in the package was CBCS, Certified Billing and Coding Specialist. The certification still exists, but I'll be honest, it's a very basic certification and it's not really recognized by companies. Most don't really know what it is. So although I had gotten that certification along with actually graduating the program in the college, still needed to get, something additional. So I found a job in billing, and they were opening up like a coding department, and I was able to go like work in that department, but I couldn't officially be a coder or anything until I got the certification. So I sat for the CPC, and it was back when you really had to wait a very long time. Everything was through the mail. So they didn't have like anything announced on the website or whatever. And it took like 6 or 7 weeks. It was like between 6 to 8 weeks before you would get your results back. I think it was like maybe 6.5 weeks. And I finally got that piece of mail. And when I saw my name, they put the CPC behind it. So I knew right away that I had passed and I got that certification. And there's nothing like the feeling of getting your first certification. It's just very, I don't know. It's like very exciting, but also a relief at the same time. I guess maybe that all your hard work has paid off, and that, maybe you do know what you're talking about finally. So yeah, it's super exciting. There's nothing like the first one. And I know that you're going for more. So we'll be happy to hear about your success with future certifications too. Hi, Madison. Nice to see you on Tea Talk. It's great. Oh, and Ricky, so just water tonight? Okay. Well, maybe you'll turn the water into wine. So Christy, you graduate in October and then sit for your CCS. Yeah, I knew that you were wanting to go for that too. So fingers crossed. October is like literally right around the corner. I can't believe it. It's just so close. And so hopefully you'll be able to celebrate passing and Halloween and everything at the same time. And we have Ken Carter. Hello there. I am, again, super excited that you guys joined tonight. So we are going to do things just a little bit different. We've kind of been having some like hard hitting topics lately. And then, well, for a long while, actually, since kind of we started the Tea Talk. And then I did get sick and was out for a little while. And so we're just kind of getting back up to speed. Last week, we did kind of cover a tough topic with the TCM and went through that pretty much soup to nuts. And then prior to that, it was depression screenings. So I thought that before we dove back into another like challenging topic, which we have something lined up, it's like nursing care facility visits. But I wanted to do like a little kind of like how-to session with you guys. And it's really about how to learn coding, how to research topics, and how to grow in your career. Because I do recognize that I think a lot of the people that are watching and that have joined Tea Talk are either currently in the field and working or are joining and sitting for certifications. Many times the providers that I know that have watched typically catch the shows after, but this is all still relevant to providers and those that may want to get into billing and coding. So I figured it would be good to kind of share some tips and tricks and things that I've learned through the years and just give my opinion on some of these things from kind of having to go through it and helping you guys to learn from my growing pains, I think essentially is the idea. So don't forget to put your questions or comments in the comment section. We're only on YouTube now, so I know that nobody's joined us from LinkedIn or Facebook or anything. It was just easier kind of going through one platform. And I've realized too, I think that the streaming is a little bit better because I am able to do this from my other computer. Like I'm literally on a laptop right now, and it's not like breaking up or having any issues. Like we had a lot of technical issues, like our very first Tea Talk, I had to do like a redo. So that doesn't seem to be as much of a problem either. I think it's nice, like streaming through one platform, but well, I mean, technically it's two because I'm in StreamYard, but still. So if you guys think of any questions after the fact, feel free to email us at teatalk@stalkinghorse.llc.com. Don't forget to join the herd. So you please, if you like this Tea Talk, make sure you give it the thumbs up on YouTube. You'll see a little thumbs up button there that kind of helps to upvote this video, so it will help others to find it. Also, you can subscribe to this channel if you're not subscribed already. It will actually help get you notifications for Tea Talks and such. And you can follow us if you like on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And our website is stalkinghorse.llc.com. And we tend to put some information up there also about Tea Talk. And sometimes we'll create documents, PDF documents with links and information on them that make it easy for you guys to find information on the Tea Talk topics that we've gone over. So we'll share that there as well. So without further ado, I think I'm just going to jump in and start talking. Please feel free to share your comments as we go along. So the first thing is like how to like learn coding. It's actually a big question because I see it in chats all the time. People are always asking like, hey, you know, what school would you recommend? Or who do you think I should go through to learn coding? Or what's the best way to learn it? And honestly, it's sort of a mixed answer because some of it depends upon your learning style. Um, Coding is difficult to learn 100% remotely because you're you're looking at um, different books and essentially how to use them. So it's nice to have someone sitting next to you where they can actually put their hands on the book and show you and walk you through how to find or code a particular procedure or diagnosis that you're reviewing. It's a little more challenging, not a little, a lot more challenging when you're remote. So there is that. I am doing like a little pilot program um, with a couple of people actually here that joined T Talk and going through doing some training on coding. And it is 100% remote. And so Ricky is one of them, and I just see that he just did a post about it, but a comment about it. But it is challenging, and I'm sure that they can attest to that. That if you're having difficulty understanding a certain concept, it's more difficult remotely. So if it is remote, then there's two things also. Like you may have a live professor or teacher going through lessons with you, like this, right? Like I'm on screen right now, I'm live. You guys are not. I can see your comments, but I can't see your face. So there's different platforms that are used. I typically use WebEx. I use WebEx a lot for just in my professional side. So very familiar with it. But people use Teams, Zoom, all of that. So if you're learning remotely, you still may be able to connect with someone remotely. So you may be able to connect with them through WebEx or one of those platforms where you're both on video. So it is the next best thing, right, to being in person because you're able to see one another. There's something to be said for body language also. Like I can tell with those that I'm working with right now if they're understanding or if when I'm explaining something, if they're not fully paying attention, like not intentionally, but sometimes you'll get engrossed in like reading something. And I know because it's just true of everyone, it's true of me also, that in coding, there really is no such thing as multitasking. We actually had a conversation about that before, but when you're learning coding, especially, you can't multitask. Like you have to focus on either what's being said or what you're reading. You can't listen to what someone's saying and you can't read, but we all try to do that. It's just in our nature. So you're maybe reading something and then listening to what they're saying and trying to figure it out. But I'll wait till the person's done reading and then, okay, like let's engage and let me walk you through this. So it's better than not having video, but it's still not the same as being in person. But it can work. But you just have to understand that there's having that distance and not being like in the same room actually together. It's more challenging. So that's an option. Now there are some options out there where there is actually no live instruction. Everything is like you're reading and you're watching and listening to videos and you're working on questions, answering them. You're working on different assignments. And then if you have questions, you're like sending an email, you're sending a message and someone's responding back. That's super challenging. And a lot of the learning in coding is very dry. So I would find that particularly painful. I would find that way of learning very, very painful. And I don't know if I would make it through because it's very dry reading. And when you don't have someone to listen to or to put things into context for you, in more of a personal setting, not just like an AI voice reading through a PowerPoint, it's like difficult. So, so Christy, so you're in college and still struggle in CPT. Yeah, it's challenging. And so hopefully like some things that I'm about to share too will help you in that. And, I hope that everyone in here that you all connect with each other, which reminds me, Christy, I actually still I need to email. I ended up getting sick, but I need to email someone for you that I was going to have connect with you. I need to email Barbara, so I will do that. I'm going to write myself a little note. So, um, if you are struggling in a certain area, and you can get time either with someone remotely to go over like this, to go over, or like on WebEx to go over the topic, I highly recommend it. Obviously, if you have the ability to meet in person, that's also great. Also, sometimes depending on your affiliation, so I can't really speak to AHIMA much because I'm not really sure. Like, I was a member with AHIMA, but I don't have AHIMA certification, so I didn't dig into some other stuff. I just was like a member because there were certain things that I wanted to be able to access for some projects that I was working on for research. But being that I have AAPC certifications and whatnot, they have the chapter meetings that you can join, and some of the chapters are actually super helpful where you can connect and network and find someone who may be able to work with you and help you with areas that you struggle in, and really mentor you and help to broaden that understanding. Or literally, like, sometimes it's just someone walking you through the steps to help you connect the dots when you're learning. And so, Lindsay, so you don't think you would have made it if you started remote straight from the beginning? There's so many benefits to having a team. That is so incredibly true. And then, even, I know, Lindsay, you can attest to this because we actually had chatted about it before, that once you leave the school, like once you get out of the schooling end and the certification end of it, and then you are on the job, it's like another shock of like difference in coding. But one thing I can say to that, this is interesting, you might find this super interesting, Lindsay, is since I'm doing this like basically a little pilot program on the side where I'm teaching a couple of people coding, there I was digging to look for some good resources to help, because I'm not creating I'm not writing a book. Like, I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. But AAPC's like study guide and their practice tests are not like, it doesn't really give you the whole picture. It's okay, but it's not really what you need. And it's definitely not enough practice. So I did look through AHIMA, and I actually asked Madison, who's in here. I asked Madison for some information about that because Madison had some information about AHIMA stuff, and she actually shared some really good books that she had used when she was in school. That, again, I went to school so many years ago that I don't even know, I don't remember the names of the books. But when I looked at some of them from AHIMA, and I actually purchased some information from them, they have really good coding work. So they break it up in a way that makes sense, and there's a lot of practice, which is nice. So I think a combination between the AAPC and AHIMA is really good. The only kind of pitfall to that is that the people that are learning, that I'm teaching, like in the pilot program, I don't have any deals with anybody, so they pay, like their price for the books that they need and everything. And you don't really realize until you look into it how expensive all that is when you think about the coding books, all of them that you need, and then plus the workbooks that you need to actually learn. It adds up. So the supplies in and of themselves, are pretty costly initially. But if you look at some of the programs, you could go to like an actual college and spend quite a big chunk of money. I mean, I can say that looking back, I wish I had learned a little differently because my schooling was super expensive like super expensive. I don't know, the program had to be something astronomical. Like I didn't realize at that time like how expensive it was, but it was super expensive. So I wouldn't have gone the same route, but that was partly because it was a private college. I would have been more careful about knowing what I know now, of course, right? Hindsight 2020, but I would have gone more like a state college or what have you, where the credits would transfer, because I had an issue with that when I wanted to continue to advance my education. I had to like start all over because the credits didn't just transfer everywhere, and they were super nitpicky about what they would accept, and it was essentially nothing that they would accept. So that was a real big bummer. So I would be really careful about that. It can be very expensive. So definitely look at the different options. But the AAPC has an option, AHEMA has options. There's others out there like Victoria Mall, that she has her own YouTube channel that is geared toward like newer coders, and she has a lot of great information and material, but she really does focus on like the newer coder and getting a certification tips, all for AAPC. But I think now she also has some kind of schooling thing that she's trying to do, that she has been doing. And I'd imagine it's pretty good. I haven't gone through it or seen it or witnessed it, but that's an option. And the AAPC, as I said, also, and AHEMA, they have different options for both books. And I know that AAPC has class options that you can choose from, and they're a few $1,000s. But again, depending on the way that you learn, you may end up wanting to go to an actual on-site physical campus. The remote learning is pretty challenging. So Madison, so you've sent so many long emails to your instructors when I was learning. I actually remember you mentioning that a few times, but I think that's the key too. If I'm teaching someone something and they're not asking questions, I don't feel that I know they're not learning. Whether that's on me or it's on them, one of the two, but they're not learning. That's why I love it when you guys comment in here too, because if I'm doing T-Talk and you guys aren't commenting, then what am I doing it for, right? If you guys don't have questions or concerns, and if we're not having some kind of dialogue, then what's the point of doing it? So, I certainly could find other things to do with my Tuesday evenings, but this is, I think, a great thing, and wanted to get this platform together. So asking questions is great when you're a student, and when you have someone who's teaching, if you have a professor that's actually wanting to help and wanting to do their job, that's what they're looking for. So never feel bad about asking the questions. And so Christy says, there's a mentor program, but my local CA hasn't found me one yet. I applied and I'm still waiting. Luckily, I have some study group with a few professionals to help. Oh, cool. That's good. If you don't mind, Christy, when you get a chance, what's your local CA? What's the CA? Because again, I'm just more familiar with the AAPC stuff, so I don't know what that is. If you wouldn't mind explaining that or letting me know what that is. But that's awesome, though, that you have a study group with a few professionals that can help you. It's like, that's awesome. And Lindsay, so different from the book work to actual life. Yes, it is. It is insanely different. It's always funny on my end, like in a playful way, to see everyone go from learning especially evaluation and management, like learning that for the certification and like in general coding, but then applying it in real life is completely different. But again, I do think that some of the AHEMA resources and books for practice are more realistic. Like their coding examples for ICD-10 are not all multiple choice. So you have to actually learn to look everything up, where if you use a lot of the stuff from AAPC, it's all set up like it's a test. So it's a lot of multiple choice questions, which again, get you ready for the test, but it doesn't really get you ready for the real world. So when you're doing things that's fill in the blank, that's more preparing you for that real world experience. And I don't know why I keep leaving that email up there, so let me hide that. Sorry about that, guys. And so, Christy, you have an amazing book you got from AHIMA that explains CPT for physicians and facility. It has been great. That's awesome. If is this the book? ARHIMA. No, that's Arkansas Health Information Management Association, right? Ah, okay. Oh, look at that. I got it right. Okay. I actually spoke at one of the ones in Florida, like, I don't know, like a year and a half ago. And trying to remember. Oh, it was about risk adjustment. They asked for speaking about risk adjustment. And it was pretty cool to do that on the, for those that are more familiar with AHIMA. I think we all kind of need to come together. And Lindsay, so yes, E&M didn't make sense at all when I was taking the course, and then in real life it clicked and you loved it. Yeah, well, I also know that everyone that went to school like several years ago before 2020, E&M was even more complicated because you had history exam and medical decision making, that you had the level to come up with the overall E&M code. But in AAPC, like, they would tell you like problem focused history, detailed exam, medical decision making of moderate complexity. So they'd actually tell you the level of each. But then when in the real world, like, nobody's telling you, like, you have to determine the level. So then it's like, learning how that guidelines that I think many schools didn't actually go into detail with. I think they've gotten better about that in recent years, but yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how all this stuff evolves with the education. So in learning coding, basically, I think that you need to pick what's best for you, but I recommend either in person or like a virtual but live learning environment where you can connect with a person and ask questions live and on video, where they can see you, you can see them. Because doing it just 100% virtual and on your own, it is not recommended. I do not recommend that at all for coding and billing. It's, again, a lot of the information is very dry, and I think it would be easy to feel lost and that you don't want to do it anymore, when it can be very rewarding. So I think that it's important to pick a route in which you're going to stay engaged also. Super important. And then the next part of that is about researching topics. That was sort of my next topic to talk about tonight. And that plays into the learning coding, because I don't know if everyone realizes, but the learning, like, literally never stops. And I'm rolling my eyes, but in a fun way, but it's true. It never stops. Doesn't matter. Like, I've been, in the field for over 20 years, and things change, things evolve, and you can't know everything about everything all the time. So when you sit for these coding exams, like the CPC, the, CCA, CCS, all of them, you're tested on coding concepts that have to do with every specialty, essentially. But when you work in the real world, usually you start off focused on a specific specialty. So you might get a job working in urology or ophthalmology or nephrology or primary care or pediatrics. So you usually then will focus in on that specialty, and then you gradually become extremely familiar with the codes that are related to the specialty that you're working in. Even if you work in the hospital as an inpatient coder, right? Or for the hospital as an inpatient coder or facility coder, you typically work for a specific type of facility. Or the hospital that you may do coding for, you're going to work in specific areas of that coding. So you're going to kind of hone in and learn skills related to that. But there's always going to be times where you need to learn something else or move over to another specialty, or when those code changes come in. So it's a constant learning situation with this profession. And we have several updates through the years. So our ICD-10 codes are actually getting ready to change in October. So oddly, we use 2025 codes starting in October, even though we're not even in 2025 in October, but we will be using those codes. And there's going to be obviously deletions, additions, updates that go into that. I don't typically do a lot of education covering it because I feel like that's like super saturated, because pretty much everyone puts out education on updates for ICD-10 and then CPT and all of that. They also put out a lot of education on the physician fee schedule, even when proposals are just made, and then also when everything's finalized. So there's a lot of education on that. And I don't know, I think after I've been doing it for so long, it's like, okay, like I'll kind of hear this and hear that and look for the great highlights, and when the book comes I go through and then I get comfortable. But it's, just going through it so many times, it's pretty smooth, I think, and pretty standard. The biggest thing was moving from ICD-9 to ICD-10. Obviously, that was a whole situation. So we had to learn how ICD-10 was structured versus ICD-9. And who knows, ICD-11 may be coming out sooner than we think. But you're always going to need to research topics. So an example would be that for me, one of our groups just started doing another procedure recently that two of our coders had looked into, that I wasn't made aware of until just recently, that it's typically not done by this specialty, but it turns out the surgeon is board certified in vascular, cardiothoracic, and general surgery. So it was, we're going to get sometimes some of these procedures that you wouldn't think that would fall in that particular group, because this provider can do them. And obviously, if there's an urgent need and a patient, needs a surgery, they'll do it. So I've spent recently, I would say, and I know that some in this group can attest to it, I've spent a good week and a half looking back at this one particular procedure, just because of how this provider is documenting. And I haven't had to look at this procedure in a few years, quite a few years. So you have to be aware that these changes are going to happen, and knowing how to research them is important. And while Google is like one of my best friends, I'll admit that, you have to be careful about where you actually go. So like when I Google a topic, I look at all of the answers. I don't really go to the sponsored stuff or whatever. I look underneath that, and then I look at who it's from. So you have to look at where you're getting your information from. If it's some kind of a forum where people are just kind of chatting and putting information in, that's not a credible source. I don't say like that 100% you shouldn't read it. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like, you can certainly read it and it may point you in a certain direction, but you couldn't use that as support for coding a certain way or defending something that you've coded. So you need to look for official resources. Obviously, CMS is like one of the biggest ones, or even the carrier that one of the carriers that you're dealing with. Everyone tends to forget that the insurances all may have different policies for different procedures and things too, but they also have a lot of great information. I talked about this before with the depression screenings. They have a lot of good information on their like provider portals, where they're giving specific documentation criteria or coding stuff to the providers. They're giving a lot of information about particular procedures. So you can check there. Also, any of the colleges that are online or medical associations that are on there for physicians, typically super helpful. So you just need to become familiar with, where you're looking for this information, try to vet that out, and then read through. There are a couple of specialized consulting firms that may have, you may be able to get access. One of my favorites is, and those who know me is going to know this, but Z Health Publishing. They're great for anything vascular or cardiothoracic or interventional cardiology. They're just fantastic. I love their educational materials because they give you both views. They are detailed enough to where it's like physician information, but it's also breaking down the coding. So it's not over a coder's head and it's not over a physician's head when it comes to one and the other. So the coder can still understand the medical part of it, and it actually helps to break that. They help to break that down a lot. Where if I attend, again, just because I have so many years of experience behind me, if I attend some of the educational sessions from AAPC or HEMA, it's very rare that I get something good out of them. It's great to get the CEUs that I may need, but it's not often that they go into enough detail for me to gain a lot out of it. And part of that is because many, many times you're not getting the clinical aspect of it. So if you're reading an operative report and you're trying to really understand where they are and what they're doing, you're not always going to get that from a coder explaining it. Sometimes, but it's very rare. And those people are usually working for consulting firms, kind of like I do, right? Like if I'm going to teach you something in surgical coding, like I want you to actually understand what's happening, because if you understand what's happening in the procedure, it's going to help you to code. But for some reason, the education isn't really delivered that way most of the time, which doesn't make any sense. But with Z Health Publishing, it is. Even with all other stuff that is, they have like booklets and stuff on some of these topics. Even within there, where it's just in writing, they really break it down. So I just love their stuff. And then they have like an Ask Dr. Z. So if you're a member, you can actually submit your coding medical question in, and the physician that's there, that's also an expert in coding for those types of procedures, will answer the question. And that's pretty cool. And you can actually search questions that have been asked and see answers. So they're fantastic. But again, they're very specialty specific. So it's not like you're not going to get answers to, pediatrics on there or nephrology or neurology. They don't have that. They're specialty specific, but they're pretty good. I love their site and I really like their information. It's super, super helpful. So Ricky, I think I may have missed this one. Flo Rida. I don't know. I mean, I know who that is and I like some of his songs, but I don't know if I got where you were going with that one. And then I think you caught that I didn't get where you were going with that. Sorry. So Christy, I learned the updates while I remark my new, oh yeah. So while you're marking up your new books. Yeah. We actually had a whole conversation, about that just recently with my little group. We were talking about tagging the books, and again, I've just been doing it for so long. Like I don't tab my books. I don't normally tab them, but I totally think that anyone new should tab their books, because it helps you to understand where everything is laid out while you're getting used to it. So it's super helpful in that way. And I think helps to prepare you for the exams. And then when you're working on your assignments, you know where to flip. But I've been doing it for a while, so I typically know where in the book, like I can eye it and then pretty much flip to the section that I'm looking for. But this time we did a whole class on like tabbing our books, and they actually make some specialty tabs now too. Pretty crazy. But definitely getting the updates and reading through the guidelines while you're tabbing is a great thing to do. Or making notes in your book also. So, oh yeah, National Institute of Health, they're great. Merrick Manual Science Direct. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Thank you, Christy, for sharing that. So sorry, Ricky. Yes, I had a feeling it was a joke that I missed. It went over my head. Sorry. Sorry about that. But oh, also with the research topics, one other tool, I know that when, depending on who you work for, once you get into the field, some places have memberships to specific coding sources like Encoder Pro, for example, but some don't, just depending on their size. Encoder Pro is super expensive, but it's a coding tool where you can search, can put in keywords, search for codes, and they give a lot of information about the codes, guideline information, payer information, depending on the different subscription level that you have. You may be able to like build a claim in there and then click a button to see if they think it's going to pass muster. So there's all these different like tools available within the tool, right? Or levels of use. But one that I like because it's decent and cost effective is Codify through AAPC. So even if you are more in line with AHEMA, I would still recommend taking a look at Codify. I believe they give like I think it's like a 15-day free, trial, and then you would pay for it. And there's different levels with them too. I think I do like the Profi one, like as my base. If I need to change it for a certain project, sometimes I do. So Lindsay, Codify is so helpful. I like it. I like it. And it has article information, it has CMS guidelines, guideline information. It has also the CMS fee schedule on it. And you can even look up for your specific area. You can look up the pricing for your specific area, your state, your locality. They have like a lay term section where it talks about the code in layman's terms and goes over kind of essentially like if it's a procedure, it kind of talks about what the provider is doing in that procedure, which is immensely helpful in some cases if it's something you're not very familiar with. Or if it's a diagnosis, it'll kind of break down that condition. I do have to say though, there are some conditions and procedures where they don't really have a lot of information. I get so annoyed if I have a diagnosis in there and then there's nothing like in the lay term or whatever. Christy, I have 3M encoder. That's nice. 3M encoder is a good one too. It's definitely pretty robust. Let us know in here if you're enjoying it. And I don't know if that's through who you're getting that through, but I don't know if you know how expensive it is. I'm just curious. But I do know that 3M encoder has been known to be a pretty great product. And I've used it a time or two, but not for a while. It's been a while. And so Lindsay loved the layman. Yeah, the layman's term section in the Codify is really good. And I was very skeptical about Codify in the beginning because again, it was like on the cheaper end. And this whole thing is like, okay, you kind of get what you pay for. What's the APC really going to put out here? And is it going to be comparable to like Encoder Pro and 3M's products? Like what are we really going to get here? But they did surprise me. I did honestly like it. I did like it. Also, if you guys in here have any specific coding topics that you find challenging. So I was just thinking in the back of my mind. So Christy, you had mentioned you had some trouble with CPT. If there's something in particular with CPT you can always request that too here with Tea Talk, and we can make a Tea Talk out of it, and everybody can kind of join in and help to go over it. So let us know if there's anything, anyone in here, if there's anything in particular you want to go over, any type of procedures, any diagnosis coding that you find challenging. We can make a Tea Talk out of it. So that'd be great. So the last thing, oh, wait, hold on. Christy's gotten back to us. It was a VLab with a HEMA, and I love it. It has Dr. Z, AHA, CPT assistant, and so much more. It is expensive though. Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. They get you hooked, right? They get you hooked in now because I want to keep you as a future customer. But it is pretty expensive. And so if a company's not like super large, typically they're not going to have something that robust because it's just too expensive and it just doesn't make sense for them. So, but the other thing is too, the coding clinic. Oh my gosh, coding clinic can be expensive, super helpful, a little bit difficult to learn how to use, if I'm being honest. I think from my end, I don't think it's as user friendly as it could be. So I'd like to see the coding clinic come down in price for the everyday coder and also be a little bit more user friendly for what you need it for. Like I think that initially the coding clinic was so inpatient focused, and not just inpatient, but like almost like inpatient nurse focused. AHEMA, in my opinion, is very big on nursing and like nurses getting into clinical documentation improvement. All that relates to the inpatient side initially with like DRGs and MSDRGs. And so they kind of started out there. And so it was like all this very like clinical nursey type, they were all like geared toward that. But we need it for so much more because there's the whole outpatient world that we need to use it for. So, so Christy says maybe 600 to 1,000 is what you think you were quoted. Yeah, to me, that's expensive. Like when you think about Codify being like, I don't know, you guys, what is it, like $40 a month or something? So, yeah. You have a goal to go into CDI. That's going to be interesting. I don't know if you're looking at doing that through AHEMA or if you're looking at getting like the CDEO through the AAPC. So if you haven't looked on the AAPC side of the CDEO, you might want to take a look. There's not as much red tape to jump through on that end as there is, I think, through AHEMA, because again, AHEMA was much more like inpatient focused. So because of the inpatient side and different clinical concepts that they were used to dealing with from a nursing end and having clinical conversations among nursing, I think that AHEMA is like what they were thinking from the coder end and getting into CDI is a little bit too much, if I'm being honest, because there's a difference between clinical documentation improvement that has to do with literally the documentation and coding versus having clinical conversations and being responsible for educating a provider on clinical concepts. I'm going to sound like a little bit of a jerk here, but I don't really care, to be honest, because it is just like it's our job in our profession to stay up to date with changes and information, and we have to go and we have to get our continuing education credits. Providers are expected to do the same. So they really should be educating themselves on clinical concepts. I do recognize that they need help in doing that, but it also shouldn't be automatically a coder's job to do that. There's a difference between clinical validation, right, and documentation improvement and coding based on documentation and giving advice in improving that documentation for coding accuracy. Again, not to upcode or anything, but for coding accuracy. But when they started involving when they require nursing to be a part of that CDI role, really they're wanting nurses to have clinical conversations with physicians. And I understand that, and there is a place for that. But there also should be a place for coders who are not nurses. That shouldn't be a requirement. Like being an RN should not be a requirement for that. You still can be extraordinarily helpful in clinical documentation improvement with being a coder. It does not always have to be the same. And then when you work in conjunction with a provider and they learn, you grow together. And of course, there's a certain level of clinical conversation like that you can have with providers, but it's it's not the same because again, you're not going to clinically validate something, so you're not going to be as a coder, you're not allowed to be looking and saying, well, you documented COPD here and that it's stable, but how did you diagnose the COPD? Like, what criteria did you use to diagnose the patient with that? That is not our role to do that. But on the inpatient side with DRGs and the way the coding works, they really started implementing nurses working in CDI to look at clinical information and look at diagnostic criteria to meet the qualifications for certain diagnoses, and then educate providers on, well, you documented that it was this, but they have labs showing X, Y, and Z and this and that. So, it could be, or could it be? And then you learn how to write queries and everything else. And then the provider has their options on selecting or leaving the same or what have you. But it's not really required. That's not the only way to go about it, is what I'm saying. And providers still need to be responsible for learning that. Like if we're telling them, hey, we know that your diagnosis for depression, like it's always unspecified. Can when documenting depression, here are the options. This is what the specificity is in I-10. If they don't know the difference between the things that I had mentioned, like I think it was 2 T-Talks ago, with the single episode versus recurrent and severity being mild, moderate, or severe, again, that's a clinical thing that they really should be looking into. That's their part of it, is actually making that diagnosis, right? We can say, well, here's what this information reads. This is from the DSM-5 that I saw, but it's their responsibility and their decision to actually validate the conditions clinically and make that documentation. Our job isn't to question every single thing they put in an assessment, right? Obviously, if it's something that really doesn't make any sense, you're going to question it. It doesn't make sense. But in the overall scheme of things, that's not what we're there for. And so, Christy, so you've looked into the CDIP, which, that's the AHIMA side. So take a look at the CDEO too, just to see what you think. You might find that maybe you'll want to go for both. And there's a good amount of positions out there with the CDEO also, but I guess it also depends too on where you're looking to land, in the profession. So that's the other thing about growing your career, kind of knowing what your aim is. And I know one of the big challenges is deciding, okay, am I going to go like outpatient physician based? Am I going to go hospital route? And a lot of people struggle with that. And I did too, actually, many years ago. I was like, I don't really know. And then, I when I thought about it, I said, I really want to work like with physicians. I want to know like what they're doing, what their responsibility is, and help them succeed. And then if I decided to advance my career from the clinical side, because I debated that for many years, then I figured, well, then I'll know. Then I'll know the coding side. And if I became a nurse practitioner or physician, then I would have all of that knowledge. So I decided to go on the physician side versus the hospital side. And so, Christy, good. So you'll check it out at the APC. So you want an APC cert of some sort. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Make you well-rounded too. And you've got a lot of options open to you right now, so a lot of things to consider. But again, in growing your career too, like once you've got certifications and you're working somewhere to really keep advancing, I would say like keep pushing yourself to learn. Keep trying new things, different specialties when opportunities arise. Hopefully you land a position in a place where you have opportunities to learn different things and grow from them. And then you may decide that you want an additional certification later. Like, I started out with just a CPC. And then eventually I was like, okay, CPMA. I'm auditing already. I like auditing, did that. Then I'm like, okay, CDEO, because when I'm auditing, I'm already doing all of this CDI stuff. And I know about risk adjustment. So I ended up getting the CDEO, the CRC also. So it just sort of was a natural progression. And I think that, when you start learning and growing in that way, that you'll decide, like you'll figure out, okay, what additional certification do I want? Which way do I want to go? And take your time. Like, don't expect things either like overnight. The learning takes time. Don't be too hard on yourself. And look at opportunities as a whole. One thing I would caution everyone about is like jumping around too much from place to place. I know that when risk adjustment there was like a big boom in risk adjustment. And a lot of people jumped ship from their regular jobs to take these positions that ended up that they were like contract positions for CRC because they were like promising like a high pay per hour or per chart, but it was really high pay. But the thing is that wasn't expected work for the long term. So you may have had a job for 3 months, but then once that project was over, you were out of a job completely. Where your other job may have been a solid situation, maybe not as much hourly, but there's something to be said too for happiness and learning environment and just work environment and opportunity for growth that that doesn't exist everywhere. And a lot of even still to this day, a lot of the risk adjustment positions, not all of them, but a lot of them are like temp jobs. And sometimes not all the companies are upfront about that. So you just need to be careful. Sometimes they're not upfront about it just being a specific project and that they don't know what's going to happen after that project ends. Or they might say, hey, we expect this project to be going on for 8 months. If we have more work after that and we like how you work, we may keep you on. So just something to consider. But I know many people too that love that. So there's also that other side, and they jump from one to one to one to one. But you have to be careful because there may be a period of time where there's a gap for several months where you don't have work, you don't have an income for that time frame. So you need to be aware of that too, because there's definitely a lot of that, a lot of contract work out there. And finding a risk adjustment position that's solid and that you would stick with long term can be a little bit more challenging because they're probably going to look for a specific person to fill one of those longer term roles. So, but growing your career again, like get some exposure, try to learn new skills, be patient. It does take time, and be willing, push yourself, keep paying attention to your quality and understanding. Try not to take stuff for granted and try new things. And I think one of the big things too is just the communication. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I'm one of those people that I'm always like, am I right about that? Like, okay, I think this is the answer. And I know that our team can probably attest to that because sometimes they'll come to me for an answer. And I'm like, well, I'm about 99% sure that this is the answer. Let's look it up just in case. I don't ever like to take that for granted. I think that if you think you know the answers to everything, you definitely don't know anything. So that's for sure. Again, if you guys have any topics that you want to discuss, let us know. I mentioned that we're going to plan another Tea Talk for the nursing facility codes, because that was a request that had come through a while back in email. So I definitely am going to get that covered. But if you guys think of anything new, please let us know. So you can email us at ttalk@stalkinghorseLLC.com. You can go to our website, that is stalkinghorseLLC.com. Contact us there. So either way, the Tea Talk or our regular Stalking Horse, even commenting on this live stream would work. So you could still add comments after. I know sometimes I click out and then I see that a couple of other people have said thank you and good night. So we'll definitely see your comments after the fact. So feel free to comment here too, and we'll go over them. And so thank you guys too. So thank you, Kenneth, for your comment. I'm glad you guys liked it. Yep. See you next week. Also, Christy. And thank you, Ricky. Appreciate it. So just remember, you can reach out at any time with any questions, and we'll get another Tea Talk scheduled. But at this point, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you guys for joining, and see you next Tuesday.